In 1964, Otis Redding walked into Fame's studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, with a song he wasn't sure about. He was 22 years old. He had been recording for 2 years. He had released several singles. None of them had broken through in the way that everyone around him believed they were going to break through. The song he wasn't sure about was called "These Arms of Mine." He had written it in 1962, recorded it as a B-side, and released it without expectations. Slowly, without any commercial machinery behind it, the song had found its way to people. Not many people, but specific people. People who heard it and felt, with the specific physical weight that music sometimes produces, that it was saying something true about themselves. Otis Redding did not fully understand why he had written many songs. He considered himself primarily a rocker. He admired Little Richard. He had grown up on the physical, overwhelming energy of the performers who threw themselves into a room and took it over. These Arms of Mine was none of that. It was slow. It was aching. It was the opposite of overwhelming. It was patient. And it was finding people in a way that his more aggressive material wasn't. Rick Hall, Fame Studios, described a conversation he had with Otis in 1964. Otis had been trying to work out why the slow song was doing what it was doing. He had been asking everyone around him, his manager, his musicians. Rick Hall described Otis's question precisely. "Why does the slow thing reach people?" Otis said. "When I go hard, I feel it. When I go slow, they feel it." Rick Hall thought about it. He told Otis something that Otis described in an interview he gave 2 years before his death in 1967 as the thing that changed how he understood his own music. Rick Hall said, "When you go hard, you fill the room. When you go slow, you leave room for them to fill." Otis was quiet. Rick continued. "The slow song makes space," Rick said, "and people put themselves in that space. That's why it reaches them, because it's partly theirs." Otis described what this meant for him. He said it changed everything he understood about the relationship between what he sang and what the audience received. He had thought of performing as giving. The more you gave, the more energy, the more volume, the more physical presence, the more the audience received. Rick Hall's observation said something different, that sometimes the giving was in the space, in what you left empty, in what you didn't fill. Otis Redding spent the next 3 years exploring this understanding, not abandoning the energy, not becoming a ballad singer, but learning to vary the space, to know when to fill the room and when to leave room for the room. The recordings he made between 1964 and 1967, the ones that are now considered among the greatest in the history of American soul music, are, when you listen with this in mind, studies in the architecture of space. Try a little tenderness. I've been loving you too long. Dock of the Bay, recorded 6 days before he died. Each of them a different relationship between filling and leaving. Each of them making space for the listener to enter. Otis Redding died on December 10, 1967. His plane went down in Lake Monona near Madison, Wisconsin. He was 26 years old. Rick Hall lived until 2018. He was 80 years old. In his autobiography, published in 2015, he described the conversation with Otis in detail. He said it was one of the conversations from his long career that he thought about most often. Not because of what he had said, because of what Otis had done with it. He had taken a simple observation about music and space and built a body of work around it. Work that is still reaching people. 57 years after his death. Because it makes space, and people put themselves in that space. And that is why it reaches them. Because it is partly theirs. Otis Redding was 22 years old when he understood this. He had until 26 to use it. He used every year. The space in the music is the gift, not the sound. The space. And once you hear it, in These Arms of Mine, or Try a Little Tenderness, or the whistling opening of Dock of the Bay, you understand what he understood, and you put yourself in it, and it becomes partly yours, which is the point. Which was always the point.